I never thought I would find myself in this situation, but here I am, sitting alone in my living room, the air thick with betrayal, replaying the events that led me here. My name is Dave, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. To the outside world, we looked like a perfect couple. We both had promising careers, a cozy house in the suburbs, and a seemingly happy life. But behind closed doors, things had started to change. At first, it was subtle. Sarah became distant, her laughter less frequent, and the spark that once ignited our evenings together dimmed. She claimed it was work stress, long hours, demanding clients, and the pressure of deadlines. I tried to be understanding, but part of me felt her drifting away. Little things started to add up: her sudden obsession with her phone, the late-night meetings she had, and the way she would get defensive if I asked about her day. But I brushed it off as paranoia, convinced that my mind was just playing tricks on me. The turning point came one fateful evening when I was picking up after dinner. Sarah had gone out to meet some friends or so, she claimed. As I was tidying up, I noticed her purse lying open on the kitchen counter. I hesitated for a moment, my gut telling me to leave it alone. But curiosity took over. I don't know what I expected to find, maybe a forgotten lipstick or an old receipt. But when I rummaged through it, I found something much more shocking: a hotel key card. It was one of those standard, generic hotel keys. No room number or name on it, just an ordinary piece of plastic that made my heart race with dread. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I read the small print: "Staycation in room 204." I held the keycard in my trembling hands, my mind racing with questions. Why did she have this? Where did it come from? I confronted her when she returned, and let me tell you, it didn't go as I had hoped. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I held up the keycard, watching her face drain of color. "What is this?" I demanded. Instead of the honesty I craved, she launched into a rehearsed performance. "Oh, come on, Dave, that's from before us. I told you about my wild college days." Her laugh was forced, and I could see the panic in her eyes. She claimed it was just an old key she'd kept as a joke, a piece of nostalgia from a time long gone, but I wasn't buying it. I could feel my anger bubbling just below the surface as she continued to lie. "You have to believe me, it doesn't mean anything," she pleaded, her voice rising. I saw the fear flash in her eyes, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. But then the anger kicked in, overriding any sympathy I might have had. "Why would you keep something like this? What else are you hiding?" I shot back, my voice growing louder. Suddenly Sarah's demeanor shifted. The calm, cool facade cracked, and she became defensive, throwing accusations at me. "You're just paranoid, you always think the worst of me." It was infuriating. Here I was, presenting her with undeniable evidence, yet she twisted it and turned it back on me. I didn't know what to feel. I was shocked, betrayed, and furious all at once. Memories of our wedding day, the promises we made to each other, flashed through my mind like a broken record. My heart felt heavy in my chest as I took a step back, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions. It felt like reality was shattering around me, and I was left to pick up the pieces. As I sat there, listening to her frantic justifications and lies, a part of me wanted to believe her. But the more she spoke, the more I recognized the cracks in her stories. How could I let this slide? How could I ignore the evidence right in front of me? I took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind. I had to think clearly. I needed a plan, but first I needed time to digest what had just happened. I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a long, painful road ahead. The emotional fallout was just starting to settle in, and I realized I had a lot to process. I felt an icy clarity setting in. Whatever I decided to do next had to be calculated. I was done with the lies, and it was time to take control of my own narrative. What I didn't know was that the path I was about to take would lead to unexpected consequences, both for her and for me as well. Stay tuned. The confrontation with Sarah left me in a state of turmoil. I found myself pacing the living room, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. I felt betrayed, hurt, and above all, angry. But I also knew I needed to gather evidence before I could confront her again or decide what to do next. I couldn't just rely on that hotel keycard as proof. I wanted to know the full extent of her betrayal. Over the next few days, I turned into something of a detective. I started watching her closely, observing her behavior for any signs that might confirm my worst fears. I noticed she was still acting distant, her phone glued to her hand, often texting or taking calls in another room. There were nights when she would come home late and offer half-hearted excuses about work, and I found myself becoming increasingly skeptical. One afternoon while she was at work, I decided to dig deeper. I went through her phone while it was charging on the kitchen counter. I felt guilty doing it, but I was desperate for the truth. I scrolled through her messages and felt my heart race as I stumbled upon a conversation that changed everything. There were flirty texts exchanged with someone named Mike, and it wasn't just innocent banter. There were plans to meet up, and the language was explicit. My hands shook as I read through the messages, feeling the walls close in around me. I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach. Everything she had said, the before us excuse, was a lie. I felt like a fool for believing her. I had trusted her implicitly, and now it felt like my entire world was crashing down. The anger I had felt initially transformed into a deep-rooted sadness mixed with a sense of betrayal that I had never known before. Around the same time, I discovered a few more clues that seemed to confirm my suspicions. She had left her calendar open on the dining table, and I noticed a marked date circled in red: dinner with Mike. I was furious. How could she be so brazen? I took a screenshot of the calendar and saved it for later. I needed to confront her again, but this time I was armed with more than just a keycard. When Sarah came home that evening, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I had to face her again, but this time I was ready. I didn't want to give her the chance to lie to me again. I chose my words carefully, wanting to expose her deceit without being overly emotional. "Sarah, we need to talk again," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She looked at me, an eyebrow raised, her smirk slowly fading as she sensed my seriousness. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the incriminating messages and the marked calendar. "What's this?" I asked, holding up my phone for her to see. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I thought she might deny it again, but instead she faltered. "You went through my phone," she shot back, her tone defensive, but the guilt was evident in her eyes. "Is this you?" I pressed, not letting her change the subject. "Dinner with Mike. Tell me, Sarah, what else do you have to say?" It was like watching mask slip away as her facade crumbled. She looked cornered, caught in a web of her own lies. I can explain," she stammered, but I was done listening to excuses. "Explain what? How you've been cheating on me?" I responded, my voice rising. "How you've been lying to my face." I could feel my emotions boiling over as she tried to rationalize her behavior. "It was just a mistake. I was feeling neglected," she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. But I wasn't interested in her sob story. I wanted the truth, and I wanted to confront her with it head-on. We fought back and forth, her excuses becoming more ridiculous as the minutes passed. "You don't understand what I've been going through. You've changed, Dave," she finally yelled, trying to shift blame yet again. I wanted to feel desired again. "You don't love me like you used to." The sheer audacity of her words took me aback. "You think cheating on me is going to make me love you more? How does that even make sense?" I shot back, feeling the anger rise again. I couldn't believe how twisted her reasoning had become. I felt a mix of sorrow, frustration, and disbelief. The woman I thought I knew was slipping away, revealing a version of herself that I could barely recognize. The fight escalated, and as we exchanged harsh words, I felt a part of myself hardening. I realized that I couldn't go on living like this. I had to make a choice now. Either I was going to fight for my marriage, or I was going to walk away and reclaim my life. But as I looked into her eyes, I knew that trust was shattered beyond repair. As I took a moment to collect myself, I began to make a plan. The anger was still there, but it was turning into something more strategic. I needed to gather my thoughts and figure out the next steps. I couldn't just let her get away with this betrayal. I decided that I had to teach her a lesson, one she wouldn't forget. I would find a way to make her understand the consequences of her actions. It was time to take control of my life and, in turn, show her the weight of betrayal. Little did I know that the road ahead would be far more complicated than I could ever imagine. but I was ready to take that first step into a new chapter, one that would ultimately change everything. After the confrontation with Sarah, I was left feeling like a soldier returning from a battle, wounded but determined. I spent the next few days in a haze, oscillating between anger and a strange, cold clarity. I knew I had to make a decision about my marriage, but more importantly, I needed a plan that would give me a sense of control over this chaotic situation. I started by doing some research. I wanted to know what I was up against. I joined some online forums and read stories of others who had been cheated on. I found a surprising sense of camaraderie in those tales of betrayal, and I learned some common strategies for dealing with infidelity. There were a lot of opinions out there, but one piece of advice stuck with me. Don't let your emotions rule your decisions. I knew I had to play my cards wisely. I decided I wouldn't confront Sarah right away. Instead, I would gather more evidence, keeping my emotions in check while plotted my revenge. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, and I had a few ideas in mind. One thing was clear: I wouldn't let her walk away unscathed. I began to track her movements closely. I made excuses for why I was busy or unavailable, giving her the freedom to act without suspicion. I wanted her to think that everything was back to normal, that I was willing to overlook her betrayal. But inside, I was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode when the moment was right. Using social media to my advantage, I created a fake profile under a different name. It was a small risk, but I thought it could pay off. I started to befriend her friend Mike. I crafted a persona that was just charming enough to lure him into a conversation. My plan was to gather information about their relationship, to see how deep this betrayal ran. It felt manipulative, but I was prepared to do whatever it took. Over the next few weeks, my life felt like a double agent's existence. I would dutifully act as a supportive husband while simultaneously digging deeper into Sarah's affair. I learned about their secret meetings, their coded messages, and even the places they frequented together. The more I learned, the more hurt and anger bubbled beneath the surface. I felt like I was living in a movie, one with a twisted plot and a protagonist who had lost his way. I kept reminding myself that I was doing this for my own peace of mind, but there was also a thrill in the chase, a sense of power that came from being in control of the narrative. Each piece of information was a little victory, a reminder that I wasn't as helpless as I thought I was. Eventually, after weeks of gathering intel, I felt ready to execute my plan. I decided to confront Sarah with everything I had learned, but I would do it in a way that would leave her reeling. I wanted her to understand that her actions had consequences, that she couldn't simply lie her way out of this mess. On a Friday evening, I insisted that we have a date night. I wanted to create an environment that was somewhat normal, to disguise the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. I made dinner, set the table with candles, and even put on a playlist of our favorite songs. It was a facade of normalcy, but I felt the tension hanging in the air. As we sat down to eat, Sarah was her usual charming self, laughing and chatting about her day. I could see that she still felt confident that I was oblivious to her betrayal, but that wouldn't last for long. After dinner, I suggested we move to the living room with a glass of wine. The mood was light, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could salvage our relationship, but I knew it was only the calm before the storm. "Sarah," I began, my voice steady, "before we get too cozy, there's something I need to talk to you about." Her smile faded as she sensed the seriousness in my tone. "What is it, Dave?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. I took a deep breath, and in that moment I felt a rush of adrenaline. "I know about Mike," I said, watching her expression shift from curiosity to shock. "I know about the texts, the dinners, everything." I pulled out my phone, showing her the incriminating messages and screenshots I had collected. Her face paled as she processed what I was saying. "Where did you get that?" she stammered, her defensiveness kicking in. "It doesn't matter where I got it. What matters is that you've been lying to me," I pressed, feeling a rush of satisfaction as I watched her crumble under the weight of her betrayal. "Dave, please just listen," she started, but I cut her off. "No, you listen. You've betrayed me, and now you're trying to shift the blame onto me. This isn't about me. This is about you lying and cheating. My voice rose, fueled by the pent-up anger and hurt. For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a mistake. She finally shouted, desperation in her voice. A mistake? You think this is just a mistake? I countered, feeling my anger boil over. You were planning dinners with him, Sarah. This wasn't just a one-time thing. The confrontation spiraled into chaos as we shouted back and forth. She tried to explain herself, but every excuse felt weaker than the last. I could see the panic in her eyes, the realization that her web of lies was collapsing around her. As the fight escalated, something shifted in me. I realized that no matter how much I wanted to make her feel the consequences of her actions, there was a part of me that still cared for her. But the trust had been shattered beyond repair, and I couldn't let that go. I took a step back, my emotions swirling as I prepared to deliver the final blow, the moment that would change everything between us. I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I can't stay married to someone who doesn't respect me. I'm done. Her face fell. I had crossed a line, and in that instant I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. I was finally taking a stand for myself, but it was also the end of a chapter that I had once cherished. As she started to cry, I knew that my decision was final. There was no going back now. I had made my choice, and I was prepared to face the consequences. But I also knew that whatever happened next, I would emerge stronger on the other side. The aftermath of that explosive confrontation left me in a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with an overwhelming sadness. I had finally confronted the truth, but it came at the cost of my marriage, a union I had once cherished. As Sarah's sobs echoed in the living room, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. "Dave, please don't leave me," she pleaded, her voice broken and raw. "I can change. I never wanted to hurt you." I tried to remain firm, but inside I was wrestling with my own feelings. I had loved her once. I had vowed to stand by her side through thick and thin. But how could I reconcile that love with the betrayal that had shattered our foundation? "You've already hurt me, Sarah. I can't pretend everything is okay anymore," I replied, my voice steady yet tinged with sorrow. As she continued to cry, I felt the room closing in around me. I needed space to think, to breathe. I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her behind in the chaos of our shattered dreams. I drove aimlessly, trying to clear my head and process everything that had just happened. The streets blurred as I wrestled with the reality that my life was about to change forever. I ended up at a nearby park, a place where I used to take Sarah for walks. I sat on a bench, staring at the ground, feeling both lost and liberated. On one hand, I knew I was doing what was right for me, reclaiming my dignity after being betrayed. On the other hand, the emotional weight of losing Sarah felt insurmountable. I thought about all the memories we had created together, the laughter, the love, and the dreams for the future. It felt like a part of me was slipping away. But as I sat there, I reminded myself of the reasons I had made my decision. I couldn't be with someone who didn't respect our vows, someone who would betray me without a second thought. I had to focus on rebuilding my life, even if it felt terrifying to step into the unknown. After a few hours of reflection, I returned home. Sarah was still there, sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I could see the despair etched on her face, and part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but I had to remember why I had left in the first place. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a bit," I said, my voice steady but gentle. "I need some time alone to think about everything." "Dave, please don't go," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'll do anything, just give me a chance to make this right." I shook my head, feeling a pang of sorrow for her desperation. "You had your chance, Sarah. You made your choice when you decided to betray my trust." That realization felt final, like a door closing on a chapter I could never reopen. I grabbed a few essentials and walked out, leaving behind the home we had built together. It felt surreal, like I was stepping into another world, one that was filled with uncertainty and heartache. My brother, Jake, welcomed me with open arms when I arrived at his apartment. He could see that I was shaken, and he immediately sat me down to talk. "What happened, man? You look like an absolute wreck." he said, his concern evident in his voice. I told him everything from the subtle signs of Sarah's infidelity to the explosive confrontation that had shattered my world. As I recounted the details, I felt the weight of my pain spilling out. Jake listened intently, offering support and validation as I laid bare my emotions. "You deserve better than that, Dave," he said firmly. "You deserve someone who will love and respect you. Don't forget that." His words resonated deeply, and I tried to absorb the wisdom they held. I had spent so long doubting myself, questioning if I had done something wrong. But the truth was I hadn't. I had been faithful, loyal, and loving. I was the one who had been wronged, and it was time to own my truth. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on healing. I spent time with Jake, caught up with friends, and even dabbled in new hobbies. I took walks, went to the gym, and began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. The initial pain was still there, like a dull ache in my chest. But slowly, I began to see a glimpse of light at the end of the tunnel. But as I moved forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed closure with Sarah. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions, to realize that infidelity was not something that could simply be brushed aside. I decided it was time to confront her one last time, but this time, I would approach it with a different mindset. I reached out to Sarah and asked her to meet me at a local coffee shop. I wanted a neutral setting, a place where we could talk without the weight of our past home looming over us. When I arrived, I saw her sitting at a corner table, fidgeting nervously with her hands. Her expression was one of apprehension, and for a brief moment I felt a twinge of empathy. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, taking a seat across from her. She looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "I just want to say how sorry I am for everything," she started, her voice trembling. "I know I messed up and I can't take it back. Apologies are nice, but they don't change what happened," I replied, my tone measured but firm. "I want you to understand that your actions have consequences. You hurt me, Sarah, and while I wish you well, I need to move on." Tears filled her eyes again, and she nodded slowly. "I know. I just wish I had realized it sooner. I didn't think about how my actions would impact you." We talked for a while longer, and I could see the regret etched on her face. I wanted her to truly understand the gravity of her betrayal, to recognize the pain she had caused not just to our marriage but to me as a person. As we wrapped up our conversation, I felt a sense of closure. I left the coffee shop with a clearer mind and a lighter heart. I realized that I was no longer tied to the past. I was free to embrace the future on my own terms. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to carve my own path. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth along the way. I felt empowered to move forward, leaving behind the pain of betrayal to find a new beginning. The weeks that followed my final confrontation with Sarah marked a significant turning point in my life. I had taken the steps necessary to reclaim my sense of self, and I could feel the heaviness of betrayal gradually lifting off my shoulders. I focused on personal growth, diving into my work, reconnecting with friends, and rediscovering the joys of life that had slipped through the cracks during my tumultuous marriage. My brother Jake was a constant source of support, encouraging me to embrace new experiences and challenges. He signed me up for a hiking trip with a group of friends, and at first I was hesitant. The idea of being in a group setting with people I didn't know felt daunting, but Jake pushed me to step outside my comfort zone, and I reluctantly agreed. The hike turned out to be an incredible experience. The trails were breathtaking, the company was lively, and I felt the weight of my past lifting with every step I took. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of freedom. I was no longer tied down by the anchors of betrayal and heartache. I was carving out a new path for myself. As I hiked through the stunning landscapes, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned. I realized that while the pain of infidelity was deep, it had also propelled me to discover my own strength and resilience. I had fought hard to regain my sense of self-worth, and I was proud of the progress I had made. One evening, as I sat around a campfire with the group, sharing stories and laughter, I felt a shift within me. I was surrounded by new friends, people who didn't know my past but were there to build new memories. It was liberating to let go of the baggage that had weighed me down for so long. I found myself smiling more, laughing freely, and feeling a sense of connection that I had thought was lost forever. Jake and I often talked about my journey, and he reminded me that healing takes time. "You're doing great, man. Just remember that it's okay to take things slow," he said one night as we sat on his porch, sipping beers and watching the sunset. I appreciated his encouragement. It was nice to know that I had someone who genuinely cared about my well-being. As the weeks rolled on, I started to consider the possibility of dating again. It felt intimidating, but I was also intrigued by the idea of finding someone who could appreciate me for who I was now, someone who would respect and honor our partnership. I took my time with this new adventure, knowing that it was essential to approach it with caution. I signed up for a dating app, and after a few weeks of swiping, I found myself chatting with a woman named Emily. She had a warm smile in her profile picture, and her bio reflected a sense of humor and kindness. We struck up a conversation that flowed easily, and before long, we decided to meet for coffee. When the day arrived, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I hadn't been on a date in ages, and the thought of opening myself up to someone new made my heart race. But as soon as I sat down across from Emily, those nerves began to dissipate. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories about our lives, interests, and experiences. Emily was genuine, refreshing, and unlike anyone I had met before. She listened as I talked about my journey and the lessons I had learned, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. It felt good to share my story without the weight of shame or regret holding me back. I was beginning to feel like myself again. As we finished our coffee and prepared to say goodbye, I felt a spark of hope. "Can I see you again?" I asked, surprised at my own boldness. She smiled and her eyes lit up. "I'd love that." As we exchanged numbers and parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement about what lay ahead. I had taken the plunge into the dating world, and while it was still daunting, it felt like a step in the right direction. But even amidst this newfound happiness, I knew I still had some unresolved feelings about my past. I had come a long way in my healing process, but the scars of betrayal lingered. I needed to make peace with my experience before fully embracing a new relationship. I decided it was time for one final conversation with Sarah, one that would allow me to lay everything to rest. I reached out and asked her to meet me one more time, this time in a neutral location, a local park where we used to enjoy picnics. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "Thanks for coming," I said, taking a seat beside her. "Of course, Dave, I wanted to talk too," she replied, her voice softer than I remembered. We exchanged small talk before I cut to the chase. "I wanted to say that I've been working on myself since our separation. I've learned a lot about what I want in life and what I deserve in a relationship," I began. Her eyes flickered with a mix of emotions, and I could see the regret etched on her face. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching too. I know what I did was unforgivable, and I'm truly sorry for how everything ended," she admitted. I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to let you know that I wish you the best moving forward. I hope you can find happiness too." Her expression softened, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved. "Thank you, Dave. That means a lot. I hope you find what you're looking for as well." We talked a little longer, each of us sharing our hopes for the future. It felt cathartic to have this conversation, to express forgiveness and finally close that chapter of my life. As we hugged goodbye, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had taken the time to heal, to reflect, and to learn from the pain of betrayal. I was ready to embrace the future, ready to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. With Emily in my life and my heart open to new experiences, I felt hopeful for the first time in a long while. As I walked away from the park, I knew that while the journey had been difficult, it had also been transformative. I was stronger, wiser, and more aware of my worth than ever before. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with courage and an open heart. It was a new beginning, and I was excited to see where it would lead me. As I settled back into my routine, the days turned into weeks and I found myself more at peace with my decisions. The conversations with Sarah had given me a sense of closure, and I felt lighter, like I had shed a heavy coat that had been suffocating me for far too long. I was ready to embrace the future, and I was determined not to let the shadows of my past dictate my happiness. Dating Emily was a breath of fresh air. Our chemistry was undeniable. We shared laughter, adventures, and meaningful conversations that made me feel alive. Every outing with her felt like a new experience, a reminder of the joy that existed outside the confines of my previous marriage. Emily was genuinely kind and supportive, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't thought possible after my trust had been shattered. One evening, as we strolled through a beautiful park, the sun setting behind us casting an orange glow, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "You know," I said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I really appreciate how patient you've been with me. It's been a journey and I didn't think I could ever open up again." Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I understand that trust takes time to rebuild. I'm just glad I can be here for you while you navigate through everything. You're worth it, Dave." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had spent so long feeling unworthy and broken, yet here I was, experiencing a connection that felt genuine and true. I realized that while Sarah had taught me painful lessons about loyalty and trust, it had also prepared me for something real and meaningful with Emily. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to grow closer. I found myself sharing more of my past, my fears and insecurities, knowing Emily wouldn't judge me for the scars that came from betrayal. She listened intently, never dismissing my experiences but instead validating my feelings. It was refreshing to speak openly without fear of ridicule or blame. I also discovered new facets of myself along the way. Emily encouraged me to pursue my interests, and I found joy in things I had long neglected: painting, hiking, and even attending a cooking class. I felt like I was rediscovering who I was outside of the identity I had formed in my marriage. With Emily's support, I began to embrace my passions and desires, which added a new layer to my life. Despite the happiness I felt, I was still cautious. I knew I couldn't rush into anything too quickly. I had to protect my heart. Emily understood this and never pressured me for more than I was ready to give. Instead, we took our time, building a foundation that I hoped would stand the test of time. After a particularly wonderful weekend spent exploring a nearby city, we returned home, and I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. We settled on the couch, laughing as we reminisced about our adventures. It was in that moment of comfort and joy that I realized I was ready to take the next step. "Emily," I started, my heart racing, "I know it's been a journey for both of us, and I can't thank you enough for being so understanding. I didn't think I could ever feel this way about anyone again." Her expression softened, and I continued, "I want you to know that I'm ready to let go of the past and fully embrace what we have." She smiled, a beautiful, warm smile that lit up her face. "I feel the same way, Dave. We're on this journey together, and I'm excited to see where it leads." Taking a deep breath, I reached for her hand. "Can we make it official? I want to be in this with you without the shadows of my past holding me back." She squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes glimmering with excitement. "Yes, absolutely yes." In that moment, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had taken the leap, and I was ready to embrace this new chapter with open arms. It was a testament to the healing I had undergone, the strength I had found within myself after facing the pain of betrayal. With Emily by my side, I felt hopeful about the future. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. I had faced my demons and had come out stronger on the other side. It was a journey that had changed me, but it had also paved the way for a brighter tomorrow. Looking back, I could now appreciate the journey, every heartbreak, every tear, and every moment of doubt. They had led me to this point where I could finally say I was ready to love again. I had reclaimed my happiness, and with Emily I was excited to write the next chapter of my life. As we sat together on that couch, the warmth of her hand in mine, I felt a sense of peace and possibility. I was no longer defined by my past. I was ready to forge a new future filled with love and laughter. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I could face them head on, and I was eager to embrace the journey ahead with someone who truly valued me for who I was. And so, with hope in my heart and a smile on my face, I looked towards the future, ready for all the adventures it would bring.